Hello children, how are you all? I hope you all are healthy at home. So now it's a time to start one more chapter, that is chapter number 13. And the chapter number 13 is very interesting, that is, it is why do we fall ill? And this chapter is related to our current condition. We all are taking online classes at home and we are working from home. We are not going out because of a single reason, that is, we all want to protect ourselves from a very common infection which is occurring nowadays. So here in this chapter we will discuss about our health aspect only. So before starting this chapter, I would like to ask you some basic questions. And I know you all are aware of all these things and you all are having answers of these questions. My first question is, why are we taking online classes? Why most of us are at home nowadays? Why are we taking various precautions nowadays? Why we are taking care of sanitization? Why we are wearing masks and gloves? What will happen if we will not take all these precautions? We all are aware of this. That is why we are at home nowadays. So this chapter is very interesting because it is related to the current situation. This is a time now when we all have realized the importance of good health. Now children, this is a slide showing you a lockdown. I want to memorize the time of the beginning of lockdown when we all were stuck at home because of a single reason, that is COVID infection. And in this slide you will see that there are so many people, those who are giving their sample and people taking the sample, wearing PPE kit and all, taking so many precautions so that they will not fall sick. That means the health is very, very important thing. And I'm sure that in today's scenario, you must have experienced the importance of health. Now let us focus on the effect of this pandemic, which is occurring nowadays. Although this pandemic has nothing to do as such, COVID infection is not there in this chapter. But to generate your interest in this chapter, to increase your curiosity to know about the importance of health, I need to focus on this current issue of COVID infection. This pandemic has affected thousands of people who are either sick or are being killed due to the spread of this disease. The most common symptom of the viral infection are fever, cough, cold, bone pain and breathing problems, and ultimately leading to pneumonia. And in some worse condition, it is leading to death also. So this clearly tells us about the seriousness of this disease. Not only this disease, it also tells us about the importance of health in everyone's life. In this slide, you can see the number of cases, active cases with COVID infection and number of deaths all over the world. So the purpose of showing all this information about COVID to you was to make you realize about the importance of good health and how you can maintain that good health. By cleanliness, hygiene, by taking proper food, by keeping mental, physical and social health. So in the beginning of this chapter, there is one activity which is given in your textbook. Let us go through that activity also. It will also generate your interest in this chapter. So this activity says, we have all heard of earthquakes in Latur, Bhuj, Kashmir, etc., or the cyclones that attack the coastal regions. Think of as many different ways as possible in which people's health would be affected by such a disaster if it took place in our neighborhood. But the fact is that Nowadays, we are suffering with this disaster, biological disaster. That is the dreadful COVID infection. How many of these ways can we think of are events that would occur when the disaster is actually happening? How many of these health related events would happen long after the actual disaster, but would still be because of the disaster? You must have heard about reoccurrence of COVID infection in so many people. Not only this, after taking the treatment of COVID, maybe after 10 years or 5 years, the people will show some other symptoms of reactions. So these are all after effects of the disaster. Why would one effect on health fall into the first group? And why would another fall into the second group? So these are some interesting questions, and when we try to find out answers to these questions, we realize that health and diseases are very complex issues in human communities with many interconnected causes. Without good health, you cannot work properly. Your body cannot react properly. And when you suffer with diseases, your body reacts in some negative way, and because of that, you are not able to perform your function. So now a question arises, that is, what causes diseases? And how these diseases can be prevented? You all know that diseases can be caused by various causative organisms. It can be bacteria, viruses, fungus, protozoans, etc. And how we can prevent them? We can prevent them by taking precautions, by maintaining good health. So we have already studied about cell in chapter number 5. In that chapter, we studied about the various cell organelles and various properties of cells. And we also studied that cell is made up of variety of chemical substances. It can be proteins, it can be carbohydrates, fats, lipids, and so many other things, biomolecules. When we observe the image of cell, which is given in your textbook or which is shown by me on the screen, on your screen in that previous video, the cell looks quite static structure in that slides. But actually, when you will see the actual video of a living cell, you will come to know that cell is a highly dynamic place and highly active place in living organisms. Why it is highly active or highly dynamic? Why I am saying all these things? What happens inside the cell? There are so many chemical reactions which take place inside the cell. There are several movements which occur inside the cell. Movement of various molecules, compounds, components, hormones, enzymes, etc. There is repair processes which go on in our body. Cell division is also one of the example which is shown by living cells. And here some movement is required, some movement is seen. Movement of molecules is seen. See how interesting it is that a cell divides and forms 2 new cells or 4 new cells. So this is something dynamic, very dynamic and highly active process. In our organs or tissues, various activities takes place. Like when I am delivering this, I am recording this session, my muscles, facial muscles are working, I am saying something, my voice cord is working, my eyes are coordinating, my facial expressions are coming. So these are all activities which are occurring in me. Similarly, from your end, if you will see, you are listening, you are watching, your brain is working, you are accepting something, you are gaining some knowledge. Similarly, when a third person who is just sleeping, so many processes are taking place in that person also. That is breathing, digestion, filtration, etc. So, in our organs and tissues, there are so many activities which occur. And all these activities are interconnected with each other. To understand this, I have taken one example here, that is, if suppose your kidneys stop working. You all have studied that kidneys perform the function of infiltration, and urine is formed only because of this filtering capability of kidneys, in which kidneys take out all toxin material and water from the blood, and the toxin material is ultimately released from body in the form of urine. If suppose kidneys are not working properly, then in that case your body will start accumulating the toxins in it. And if these toxins are accumulated in your body, you will see that your brain will not able to function properly. Now you can interconnect these two different systems. Your excretory system, where kidneys are working, and your nervous system, where brain is the active part. If the kidneys are not performing its function properly, the brain will ultimately get affected. That shows you that the systems which are present in our body are interconnected with each other. For all these interconnected activities, we require some energy and raw materials. That energy which is required by your body is generally given by food. So food is the basic requirement of all the living cells and tissues to perform its function properly. This clearly indicates that anything that prevents proper functioning of cells and tissues will lead to the lack of proper activity of the body. That means if your cells are getting affected, if your cells or tissues or any particular organ is not working properly, your entire activity will be affected by this. Now let us summarize what we have done in today's session. We started our session with a very brief introduction, and in that introduction we related the chapter's heading with today's COVID situation, and then we discussed about the various active dynamic processes which take place inside the cell. We studied that cell is a highly active and dynamic place because here so many activities occur. And we also studied that for performing the function of various tissues, organs and cells, they require energy, and that energy is given to these cells, tissues and organs by food. The various organs and the various systems which are present in our body are interconnected with each other. Now there are certain questions for you children. The first question is, why do we exercise, or why do people exercise and take care of their health? What is the basic unit of all living beings? How you can say that a living cell is an active or dynamic place? I hope you all are able to answer these questions. These are very basic questions. Thank you.